Have you ever thought you had something like a guardian angel watching over you during your toughest moments? We've all said something like that at some point, but now imagine that a real angel actually falls from the sky, protects you, and stays by your side for whatever you need. This girl is really lucky. Or maybe not. Let's find out her story. Careful, because there are spoilers. Bangkok shines between temples and neon lights. They call it the City of Angels because different kinds of angels live together there. Some are guardians who protect humans, others are angels of love who nudge hearts. And then there are the police who watch over their own kind. And they all answer to the Ministry of Angels, led by Michael, the most handsome and powerful, who grants wishes if there are enough merit points, which keeps the fragile order in place. Thanks to his impeccable work, the Lord of the Angels names him as his successor. The announcement sparks celebrations and looks of respect all around him. Michael smiles confidently, with heaven at his feet and his future decided, but something new is about to demand his attention. In the midst of the celebration, an urgent wish breaks through. A girl named Lynn wants to end her life, as her story has been a trail of misfortune since she was born. Michael halts his joy and listens in silence, weighing the consequences and the unforgiving rules. Even so, without enough points, he decides to help her. He breaks protocol with a determination that burns him from within. He peers into the human world, ready to intervene, but every second pushes him toward an inevitable fall. In that moment, Michael falls from the sky, naked, powerless, and hits reality with cold and shame. Lynn sees him and orders him to leave. Desperate, he begs her for a place to stay until he can return above, and the tension rises. Lynn agrees, but demands his gold ring, the very one given to him by the Lord of the Angels. Michael then has no choice and hands it over to her. This gesture leaves him without a final refuge, and the line between angel and human grows ever thinner. With that ring, Lynn pays off all her debts and still has enough left over to eat for a week. She breathes for the first time in a long while, but now she has a fallen angel in her living room and one more secret to keep. Meanwhile, Michael cleans up the mess in the place and discovers something, or rather a series of things, that he thought impossible for himself until now. He sneezes, sweats, feels thirsty, and is hungry too. Need gets the better of him and he begs for food. Lynn covers him with a red scarf, sneaks him out because bringing men is forbidden, and with every step they get closer to bigger trouble. She takes him out to a skewer stand to ask for free food. The smell overwhelms him and shame bites at him, but hunger rules. Lynn negotiates firmly while Michael lowers his gaze, aware of his newfound fragility. At dawn, Lynn orders him to hand out flyers to earn money. Michael obeys, and on the street he meets Luke, a boy who collects donations for an animal shelter. Luke slips part of the money into his own pocket with a casual smile, and Michael watches, unable to judge. Meanwhile, he works tirelessly until nightfall and there's no sign of Lynn, so he decides to wait for her in the same spot, with empty pockets and the silent sky above. The night grows thick and doubt surrounds him. Luke comes over and tells him that Lynn abandoned him, that he can barely hold on. Michael swallows hard and watches as the rain begins. Suddenly, in the middle of the storm, Lynn returns, soaked, and the atmosphere changes. Michael hugs her tightly and they both head home. He promises that when he returns to heaven, he'll give her a better life. Lynn doesn't respond, but she holds on to those words as a temporary refuge, not knowing how much they will cost. The landlady discovers that someone is hiding in the bathroom and Michael reacts instantly. He puts on a bra, lowers his voice, and pretends to be a devastated woman. The landlady, suspicious, finally lets him stay, but not for free, and the deception tightens. The next day, they go to the skewer stand and there appears Pun Pun, a girl who falls in love with Michael at first sight. Her eyes follow them insistently, and a new front opens up. Then they visit Luke in an abandoned warehouse. He makes fake IDs and creates two for Michael, one as a woman and one as a man. The double life now has papers, but also a price. Later, Michael is handing out flyers when one of Lynn's colleagues offers him a modeling job for good money. He's not interested, but Lynn pretends to be his agent and, of course, convinces him. She goes back to her job while he poses in front of the cameras and their partnership grows stronger. At dusk, Michael catches up with her and gives her everything he earned, along with some medicine. Lynn smiles for the first time in days and even starts treating him better. In the following days, he models non-stop, shares the money with Lynn, and saves another part to get his ring back, which weighs on him like a debt. That night, Michael suggests to our girl that they go to a theme park, but Lynn refuses, saying that poor people can't afford such luxuries. He stays quiet, and the idea lingers in the air like a broken promise. The next day, Pun Pun visits Lynn to ask about her soulmate, Michael. Just then, Michael appears but dressed as a woman, and Lynn introduces her as her sister. Pun Pun, delighted, offers a basket of apples as a gesture of kindness, unaware of the tightrope beneath her feet. Later on, while Lin is taking an exam, Michael stops by the stand and confesses to Tong that he is a fallen angel. Tong looks at him with a half smile and obviously doesn't believe him. Still, the doubt lingers sharp as ever. There, he runs into Vrayua, who mentions merit points like someone familiar with the system. At that moment, Tong subtly manipulates the weather, creating a curtain of rain that quickly dissipates. It turns out that Tong, of course, is an angel, and the secret is exposed without words. Pum Pum follows Michael. She suspects that he and the supposed sister are, in fact, the same person. She watches as Lin takes him to a public restroom where he puts on a wig and changes clothes. The certainty hits like a falling domino. With this new information, she confronts Michael and threatens him. If he doesn't go out with her, she'll reveal the secret to the landlady and Lin will be in trouble. So Michael weighs the damage and silently nods, sealing a dangerous deal. On the other hand, Lin's teacher warns her that her grades have dropped, and if she doesn't get an A on the upcoming exams, there will be no scholarship. Lin swallows her frustration and heads out into the hallway, where the blow is doubled because outside she sees Pum Pum and Michael holding hands. Lin asks him why he's dating Pum Pum if he said he didn't love her, but Michael avoids the truth so as not to hurt his current girlfriend. The triangle is drawn with very tense lines. That night, Lin orders Michael to leave her apartment. He silently agrees. He looks for the money he had saved and discovers that Lin stole it, and the emptiness grows larger. To pay him back as soon as possible, Lin gets a job at an amusement park. There, unfortunately for her, she runs into Michael and Pum Pum again. The three of them end up recognizing each other among the fair's lights, and the atmosphere becomes tense once more. Lin's boss orders her to guide a group of students through the haunted house. She trembles as fear overwhelms her. Michael still takes her by the hand and goes in with her, mustering up his courage. Halfway through the tour, Lin gets lost and starts to panic. Her mind flashes back to her childhood, to the day her mother left her alone, precisely in a haunted house. Michael finds her in the shadows and helps her calm down, even as the scares keep coming at her. Afterwards, they go up on the Ferris wheel. At the top, Lin tells him how her mother used to mistreat her and how she learned to fend for herself. She also confesses that the stolen money was given to her mother for an emergency. Michael forgives her and asks her to be honest from now on. After this conversation, he leaves with Pum Pum, but throughout the entire date, he can't stop thinking about Lin. When they return, Pum Pum asks him if he has fallen in love with her, even just a little. He honestly replies that he hasn't, and leaves with Thong, who was passing by, leaving Pum Pum in a rather awkward spot. As they talk, Thong admits that he is the god of time, and that he was expelled from heaven for falling in love with a human woman. He still has his ring and his powers, and his gaze is intense. Rajua appears and confesses that he also belongs to the Divine Police. They could help Michael, but he needs to recover his ring first. But there are still no plans for this yet. Later on, Thong tells him that love is a beautiful feeling, better than being an angel. However, he warns of a rule. If an angel kisses a human, the human loses their memory. Michael is left frozen after hearing this, with yet another limit imposed on him. Well, at least he found out beforehand and not after the fact. Shortly after, by chance, Lin signs Michael up for a kiss auction. Pum Pum, wealthy and stubborn, pays a large sum and wins the kiss. Talk about being desperate. Anyway, the whole room holds its breath. She gets within centimeters, ready for her prize, but Michael maneuvers and only offers his cheek. Even so, Lin is consumed by jealousy and leaves with Luke. Luke confesses his feelings to her and leans in to kiss her, but Michael shows up and pulls her away, taking her back home. There, Lin admits she got jealous, and the silence says more than any promise could. At dawn, Michael arrives at a beach-themed modeling session. Lin is there too, having accepted the job just for the money. He tries to convince her to leave because he doesn't want anyone to see her in a bikini, but she replies that she's doing it so she can pay him, and walks off the set. The director decides that Michael has to kiss Lin. He tries to avoid it, nervous because of the rule he already knows. To help him, Lin decides to put her finger between their lips, breaking the contact, simulating the kiss, and leaving the tension hanging in the air. On the other hand, it turns out that our protagonist doesn't get the grade needed for the scholarship and won't be able to continue studying unless she pays. So she seeks comfort in Michael, but Pum Pum takes him away again. She then turns to Luke, and Michael boils inside after seeing this. Since Lin never tells him about her problems, he follows her, where our leading man discovers her job as a waitress in a miserable place where she barely gets paid. The feeling of helplessness weighs on him more than his lack of wings. That night, Michael takes her to a rooftop and promises to always be by her side. Something shifts between them, and their relationship changes. Afterwards, he visits Thong to confess that his heart races every time he's with Lin. Thong tells him that's what love is, and the vertigo becomes clear. The next day, Michael goes with Lin to her mother's house to ask for money for tuition. As soon as they reach the door, the woman tries to close it. Lynn puts her foot in the way, determined not to back down. Lynn enters and comes to a sudden stop. It turns out there's a birthday party in a well-decorated house. After that, she realizes that her mother never had financial problems and that the money she borrowed wasn't really for what she said it was. The argument escalates. The mother insults Lynn, and Michael snaps back that she's a terrible mother before leaving with our girl. On the way back, they run into Pum Pum again, who's upset about the commercial they filmed together, accusing Lynn of being a total opportunist. Lynn, hurt and furious, leaves and tells them both not to speak to her again, leaving a void that's hard to fill. The next day, our girl asks for another loan from the man who has Michael's ring in order to pay her tuition. It's 20,000 baht and she has to pay 1,000 per day. She then starts working at 3 different places to cover the payments, and her body begins to wear out. The effort ends up making her sick, and one night when she gets home, she faints. Michael takes care of her until dawn, staying up all night with cold compresses. Lynn wakes up, but the debt clock doesn't stop ticking. Since she couldn't pay the 1,000 for that day, the collectors come to her house, demand the money, and ask for more as a penalty. She says she doesn't have the money, so they grab her and try to take advantage of her, but Michael arrives just in time and confronts them. With Tong's help, they escape to the beach. The breeze washes away their anger. They talk, barely laugh, and make peace. And the tide brings a brief respite. When they return, they run into Pun Pun, who is always everywhere. She once again lashes out at Lynn, but this time Michael stops her and in the process ends the relationship. That night, the thugs call Lynn again. She hesitates to answer, but Michael lends her money so she can pay them. So more than settling the debt, what she buys is peace of mind. The next morning, Pun Pun apologizes to Michael for all the chaos he caused. He assures him that he won't reveal his secret to the landlady. Even so, he says he'll keep fighting for his love in a fair way, and the competition shifts. A few days later, Michael signs up for a most handsome man contest to keep earning money. At first, it seems like he has it in the bag, but then Mongorn shows up and steals all the attention. The crown is no longer so certain. To win, Lin puts him on a diet and exercise regimen, and Pun Pun gives him elegant clothes. Then the day of the contest arrives. Michael, more attractive than ever, dedicates a few words to Lin and promises to buy her a hairdryer with the prize money, a gesture that, obviously, Pun Pun doesn't like, leaving the rivalry in a tense pause. Michael stays close to Lin, and Pun Pun doesn't mind. He has finally understood that no matter what he does, he won't win her heart because it already belongs to someone else. So he decides to give up and wishes them luck, leaving a strange emptiness behind. Then, after several tests of physical fitness and attitude, Michael wins the competition. He goes up on stage, lifts the trophy, and decides to give all the prize money to Lin. The audience applauds, but the night still holds shadows. Later, Lin is working at the restaurant when suddenly her mother arrives with a friend and her children. The woman pretends not to know her, and Lin pretends as well since there's no other choice. In the end, the children spill the food and run around between the tables. Lin asks them to take responsibility, but the friend and her mother refuse, reigniting a spark. The argument erupts. Lin's boss sides with the customer, and in the end, they fire her. Lin decides to sue the woman, determined never to give in again. But to make matters worse, it's one of those days when everything seems to go wrong because some thieves show up, steal all the contest money, and try to take advantage of her. However, Michael, as always, arrives just in time to rescue her. Even so, the blows reach him and danger comes knocking once again. With no money, Lin takes Michael home and tends to him with whatever she has on hand. At that moment, he gives her a bill she had given him a long time ago, as if closing a cycle they now need to break. With this bill, Lin buys some medicine while Luke takes a risk and steals a couple of supplies to help her get him through one more day. The relief is brief, because nothing guarantees that Michael will get better, and night falls with more questions than answers. When she returns home, Lin finds Michael unconscious and desperately carries him to the hospital, where everything is white lights and paperwork. There, they tell her that they need to run several tests, all very expensive, and each amount sounds like a wall higher than the last. Lin sees Michael sleeping on the stretcher and feels that time is running against her, pushing her toward decisions she doesn't want to make. Since she has no way to pay, Lin finds a nightclub with Luke and moves through shadows and music, searching for some opportunity. So she steals a man's cell phone and leaves without looking back, her heart racing and urgency as her only guide. The next day, she repeats the act. She steals the cell phone from 2 more people, one at the bus stop and another inside a crowded bus. The weight of what she's stolen mixes with the fear of being caught, but necessity pushes her to keep going. After this, she hands the cell phones over to the loan shark and receives a good sum for all of them, as if she were turning her guilt into cash. She gives half the money to Luke and admits that she feels guilty for doing this. But in her situation, she has no other choice. And that confession doesn't bring her any relief either. After paying the medical bills, Michael returns home and at the same time, his mother arrives. She asks her to drop the charges against her friend, and Lynn, on the verge of tears with everything she's going through, calls her a bad mother and lets out everything that has hurt her all this time, opening a rift that she still doesn't know how she'll ever close. Even though she doesn't want to, Lynn drops the complaint against the woman, as if she were swallowing a piece of herself. It's not enough. The woman now also orders her to kneel and hits her in front of her mother, who remains completely silent, frozen in place. We already know the blow isn't just physical. Lynn looks at her mother, searching for some kind of defense that never comes, and her anger turns into a colder emptiness. Another day, Michael is walking through the neighborhood when Lynn comes running, carrying a bunch of food she just stole from a store. He barely reacts, and she's already gone with the loot, driven by habit. That same afternoon, Luke hands her a flyer showing her stealing. The store had cameras, and the frozen image serves as a sentence that marks her throughout the neighborhood. Besides stealing, Lynn takes Michael to a restaurant, and when they're about to finish, she puts a dead cockroach on her plate and makes a huge scene to get the meal for free. Michael understands this trick, and when they get home, he confronts her with a look, demanding an explanation. Lynn, on the verge of a breakdown, confesses that she has stolen many things just to help him heal and then leaves, only to steal again, driven by the same force. When she returns, she finds the house empty and a letter from Michael. He apologizes for having brought her to this situation and promises that he won't cause her any more trouble, leaving a heavy silence after the end of the tape, after the abandonment. Desperate, Lynn searches for him all night through the streets, bus stops, and corners, but she doesn't find him. All she finds is her own exhaustion. Even when Michael is gone, she doesn't give up her bad habits, and the next day she steals products from a makeup store. The manager spots her and tries to stop her, but Lynn escapes with Luke's help. The escape saves her from being arrested, but traps her even further in her downward spiral. Shifting the focus, it turns out Michael is working as a waiter at the same restaurant where Lynn used to work. All because he can't model due to the bruises on his face. Meanwhile, Lynn goes back to a nightclub to try to scam a man. There, she sees Brajoa, who runs to tell Michael and Thong. The news creates an urgent triangle that sets them all in motion. The three of them rescue Lynn from the hands of a man who tries to abuse her, bursting in before it's too late. Lynn says she has no other choice, but Michael stands his ground and promises to help her, assuring her that he won't leave her alone again. The next day, both of them work as assistants to a director and hand out flyers, moving around the city from place to place, as if they were starting to build a different routine. Even with all that work, Lynn doesn't have money to pay the rent and steals from her landlady, scraping the last boundary of her shame. She then uses that money to pay the rent. Because of this, the next day, her landlady is fired, accused of having stolen the money, and the woman cries desperately at the door. When she sees her, Lynn admits the truth and promises to pay back what she stole, trying to fix what she broke. As they walk down the street, they find an abandoned cell phone. Just then, it rings and Michael convinces Lynn to answer. On the call, a man begs for help, so the duo changes course and runs to his house, opening up a new emergency. When they enter, they find him lying on the floor and rush him to the hospital, weaving through hallways and curious glances. There, they find out that the cell phone belonged to Pon Pon and the man was her father. The young woman hugs Lynn for helping him and, as a thank you, pays her rent. The gesture brightens a crack and leaves the door open to a friendship. After this, Pon Pon and Lynn become friends and start spending time together in small ways, as if the rescue had sealed some kind of pact. That closeness softens Lynn's days, but the calm doesn't last long and a new threat looms. One night, Pon Pon's apartment catches fire. Amid smoke and screams, Michael calls Thong to create a storm to put out the fire. The sky darkens, signaling that something bigger is about to come into play. Thong arrives and, with his magical powers, conjures up a powerful storm. He enters the apartment and rescues Pon Pon, carrying her through the sparks. The rain pours down hard until it puts out the fire, but the smell of burning lingers, as if warning that the danger hasn't completely passed. Then the next day, Lynn's mother arrives to apologize for having been a bad mother and gives our girl the contest money that those men had stolen from her. It turns out that her mother's friend was the one who sent the boys to do that to her. Lynn forgives her and the two finally embrace, leaving old guilt behind, even though the past comes back anyway. In a twist, it is revealed that Luke is not human. It turns out he is the devil himself, and his task is, obviously, to lead humans down the path of evil. He becomes obsessed with Lynn and manipulates her into trying to take her own life, hoping to be with her in hell. But Michael's appearance changes his goal. Now he wants to destroy him. Michael starts having headaches and dizziness, and later his nose begins to bleed. Thong explains to him that this is happening because he doesn't have his ring and because he broke one of heaven's rules, not to fall in love. Michael insists that he isn't in love, but Thong tells him he had the same symptoms when he fell in love, and that only by getting that ring back will he return to normal. The negotiation falters in front of a body that has already confessed for him. Lynn takes care of him during this time, and the two of them start working on filming a commercial in which Michael plays the devil and a girl named Serena will be the angel. Fiction gets mixed up with reality as the symptoms worsen, making time even tighter. Michael feels instantly attracted to Selena, and she responds to this spark, seeking him out and seducing him whenever she can. Lynn notices this and keeps a close eye on him at all times, never losing sight of him between takes and lights. One day, she sees Serena kneel before Michael and reveal to him that she is also an angel. He asks her for help to return to heaven, but Serena sets a price. She will help him, but only if he takes her as his wife. The proposal plants a seed of doubt that threatens to separate our protagonists. Lynn is worried that Michael might leave, but she knows she can't stop him if he decides to go. Luckily, Michael rejects Serena's proposal and prefers to look for another option even though his symptoms worsen every day. Lynn feels a silent fear that suffocates her, that fear of losing something that was never hers as she watches him grow weaker. The next day, Lynn begs Michael not to leave because she has fallen in love with him and doesn't want to lose him, even though she knows their love is impossible. He agrees to stay on Earth despite his symptoms, choosing pain over distance. Still, Serena doesn't give up and meets with Lynn to tell her that Michael is sick and that he escaped from a psychiatric hospital, suggesting that the whole angel thing is just hallucinations and that she is his fiancé. How wicked, she insists that she's an angel. This revelation opens a new crack in their trust. Lynn starts to put the pieces together and what Serena says begins to make sense. Many people around Michael think he's crazy, and he sometimes talks about his life as an angel. Doubt settles in her mind, and she starts to suspect it could be true, wavering between both realities. Wow, what a tough situation! The next day, Lynn searches for information online, but she can't find anything to confirm or deny it. She then asks Luke for help, who agrees to hack the system in exchange for all the money she has, and she pays this price. Later, Michael throws her a surprise party because it turns out today is her birthday. But our girl was so busy that she forgot, and basically, she missed the whole day. In the middle of the celebration, she runs into Luke, who gives her photos and documents, proving that Michael was in a psychiatric hospital, pushing her doubts to a painful extreme. And let's be honest, she made it way too easy for this little devil. And besides showing her the documents, Luke convinces her that the best thing to do is to let Michael go. He says it would be selfish to force him to stay since he has a family and a home. So with tears in her eyes, our protagonist lets Michael sleep in her bed. And the next day, she takes him out with his friends before driving him to the psychiatric hospital. There, she meets Serena and some nurses who are holding Michael tightly, while Serena promises her that he will recover soon. He calls out to our girl, shouting, but Lynn takes a taxi and escapes from her own decision. Later on, she tells Pun what happened. There, her friend asks if she really believes he's sick. Lynn confesses that she's still not sure, and Pun recommends talking to him to clear up her doubts. With that in mind, Lynn returns to the psychiatric hospital, but to her surprise, Michael is no longer there, setting off another alarm. Lynn runs to Thong's stand and tells him and Branioa what happened. They explain to her that Michael really is an angel and that Luke is the devil. And to make matters worse, today there is a lunar eclipse, a day when demons rise to Earth, and since Michael doesn't have his ring, they could take him to hell. Desperate, Lynn visits the loan shark to ask for Michael's ring, but he demands money in exchange, obviously. Without having it, she asks her mother for help, who transfers her part of the money. Finally, this lady does something right, and with Thong and Pumpan, she manages to gather the rest. When they hand over the money, the loan shark says the interest is still missing and doesn't return the ring yet. Meanwhile, Michael is on a rooftop on the other side of the city with Serena, who reveals to him that she is actually a demon. No, not surprised? I don't think it's not surprising, but not just any demon. It turns out it's actually Luke himself, completely changing the situation. And speaking of changing the situation, unable to get the rest of the money, Lynn and Branioa come up with a way to just walk into the loan shark's house and steal the ring, playing their last card. The risk is at its highest, but time is running out and there's no other way. Luke tortures Michael and is about to send him to hell when Lynn suddenly appears. She tries to convince him to leave Michael alone, but Luke refuses. Luckily, Thong and Branioa arrive and throw the ring to Michael. He transforms into an angel and gets ready to finish off Luke. But Lynn asks him not to do it because it would be a sin. Michael lets him go and Luke, too weak to fight back, falls straight into hell. After this, Michael takes Lynn flying through the starry sky and even grants her the power to walk on water as a final gift. A few minutes later, he tells her that he must return to heaven and that he will never be able to come back, leaving a farewell hanging in the air. Lynn, with tears in her eyes, begs him to stay because she loves him. But Michael says that love between a human and an angel is impossible, and that he needs to return to continue his work. Before leaving, he offers to grant her a wish, and she asks for a kiss so she can forget him forever. Michael hesitates at first, but agrees, so they share their first and last kiss. Then they say goodbye, knowing that something ends there. After forgetting Michael, Lynn's life of misfortune returns, and one day, overwhelmed by her emptiness, she throws herself from the rooftop of a building. But after months in a coma, she wakes up in the hospital surrounded by her mother and friends, who encourage her to keep going. While she slept, she dreamed of Michael, and although she doesn't know who he is, little by little she starts to remember more things, like flashes that come back. Michael watches her from the sky and cries helplessly, trapped between two worlds. That day, he is named the Lord of the Angels, a dream he always had. However, after having lived on Earth, his dreams have changed, so he rejects the title and admits that he broke one of the most important rules, falling in love with a human. Now he understands human feelings and concludes that he is not happy being an angel, so he takes off the ring and decides to return to Earth, choosing love with all its consequences. First, Michael sends our protagonist a couple of gifts: a stuffed animal, a hairdryer, and most importantly, a photograph of them together. Each object opens a door in Lynn's memory, even though the face remains blurry to her. Lynn asks Thong who the boy in the photo is, but he says he doesn't know. Discouraged, she returns home, not imagining that there, sitting in front of her bed, is Michael. At first, she doesn't know who he is, but a feeling of affection slowly washes over her, and the story pauses at that heartbeat as if destiny were breathing again. Sometimes love doesn't stay. It just passes through, like an angel who touches your life and teaches you to look at the sky in a different way. Lynn loses everything, even her memories. But deep in her soul, something remains etched that not even forgetfulness can erase: the certainty of having truly been loved. To love is not always to have. Sometimes it is also to let go and wait with an open heart for whatever life places in your path. And it seems that life is bringing you some other really great summaries. So what are you waiting for? Pick another one and enjoy it.